This presentation is a photo-narrative documentary of the redevelopment project for the former Park Rapids National Guard Armory that was closed in 1992. The facility was closed and remained vacant for almost 20 years, and as a result the facility fell into a state of serious disrepair with multiple roof failures that led to extensive water damage throughout the building. Without heat, the building experienced freeze-thaw damage. The facility itself presents several serious code deficiencies, and the presence of toxic materials made the redevelopment of the Armory almost an impossibility for quite some time. The lead paint, asbestos, pipe wrap, uninsulated condition of the building, the PCB light ballasts, and other toxic contaminants like fuel oil and heavy metals. These unknown liabilities rendered the property unsuitable for development, and it was too expensive to demolish, so it just sat vacant for 20 years. The solution is to design a new building around the existing shell. So you're going to see here the process of redesigning and repurposing this facility for a new use as a regional arts and event center in downtown Park Rapids. The planning considerations for this project were to look at the historical context of the building and its use in Park Rapids, logging and tourism community in north central Minnesota. The Armory itself was built in 1922. The annex was added in 1941. Early in the traditions and history of the city, music on Main Street was quite common in the summer. Parking in the middle of the street evolved as an iconic feature of downtown Park Rapids that has been preserved through the years and through even into the modern comprehensive redevelopment plan for downtown. Planning considerations also consider traffic volume, visibility of the site, and the potential economic impact of an adaptive reuse of this facility. The existing public infrastructure at the site was inadequate to serve a modern building with modern sewer, plumbing, and power needs. The electric service was inadequate. The gas service was inadequate. Essentially what we had was a highly visible, underutilized concrete shell of no real value to anyone. The engineering process starts with a site survey and site plan to identify boundary points, site grading, the locations of city sewer and water services, along with a development plan to remove the existing hardscape and redesign that public infrastructure for new sewer and water to service the building, which also included a new 6-inch water main to provide adequate water for a automatic fire sprinkler for the building, 800 amp electric service with power panels distributing power throughout the building where needed to service a modern building, and of course modern utility services, 6-metered gas services to provide the capacity for zoned climate control areas, 4 new furnaces on the lower level, 3 water heaters on the main level of the facility, 3 furnaces, and on the 3rd level another furnace. This gives the ability to zone the building for efficient operation and reduce and manage energy costs. Part of the redevelopment process, of course, involves a redesign of the interior spaces and along with local state approvals. The project was approached as a phased approach to develop first an anchor, as the spaces in the building were studied and designed for community uses with a retail space, a restaurant space, education studios, and a performing arts studio. Here are renderings of the different possible uses for the auditorium space as a performing arts center, a banquet center, and event center. There are special considerations for occupancy in a multiple tenancy, multiple occupancy building, including the fire sprinklers, fire rated occupancy separation walls, fire rated doors and doorway enclosures, and a fire rating for the floor separations between the different levels. This creates a modern facility, first of which, of course, we have to go through an abatement process to first to identify and then remove the toxic materials that are present. The Phase 1 environmental assessment identified those issues. The Phase 2 environmental assessment involves actual testing and sampling to identify potential areas of concern, particularly where the buried fuel tank is, In the coal bunker, the presence of soil gases, volatile organic compounds, and lead in the shooting range. All of these issues had to be studied and monitored, tested and sampled, and where appropriate, a development response action plan written up and, of course, approved by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And then in the actual abatement process, you need scientists on site to monitor and sample as you're doing the abatement work. This process involves 7 different licensed contractors to perform this work over a period of about 18 months to do the assessments, develop the response action plan, do the actual disposal and documentation for the removal of the asbestos, the lead paint, PCBs, fuel oil, and testing and removing the UST, underground storage tank, and then redesign the new infrastructure. Before we can redevelop the property, we start with a demolition phase. And the exterior demolition, this involves removing all the asphalt and concrete around the site on both Highway 71 and 2nd Street. The concrete aprons, driveways, retaining walls, curb and gutter, sidewalk, and bituminous, which gives us access to the site where we can remove the underground storage tank, a 6,000 gallon fuel oil tank, remediation of the site back to a clean condition. The interior demolition, once the abatement is done, you're dealing with the non-hazardous landfill material. All of the dilapidated structures need to be removed. Anything that's been water damaged, anything that's been compromised with mold or rot. As we go along and remove those obsolete fixtures, we're verifying the structural integrity of the building, demolishing the old fixtures, and creating egress pathways to provide modern code compliant. Throughout this process, of course, there is a lot of demolition and hauling of debris. Basically gets us down to the concrete shell of the building and allows us to begin the process of redevelopment. New infrastructure, that starts on the outside of the building with excavation for sewer and water services. The existing cast iron and clay pipe is removed. We're locating the new services, 3 6-inch sewer lines to be distributed through the facility throughout. Cutting and accessing the concrete to get to the city sewer and water on the Highway 71 side of the building, and installing a stormwater containment system, which is an MPCA requirement, with collector drains around the site to a containment tank located on the northeast corner of the site. The containment tank is connected to the collector drains, which take water from the roof and the site as it's graded, and it all runs into that tank. Here we've replaced the grade and set our final grade for the site on the Highway 71 side of the building. And 2nd Street, we're excavating here for a new 6-inch water line, 24-inch borehole through the foundation to give us the water service we need for the automatic fire sprinkler system, which will be installed later. The process of adding sewer and water then moves to the inside of the building, where we basically cutting and trenching through the entire length of the building to accommodate the new sewer line and the new plumbing mains as they're distributed through the building. The exterior improvements of the building involved replacing the curb and gutter on Highway 71, grading the site, of course, removing the old sidewalks, getting the new sidewalks formed and poured. You'll notice there's now street level entrances here, and new curb and gutter, sodded boulevard, curb cut to give us access to the building, and a couple boulevard trees there. And of course, a new glass and storefront lobby entrance at street level. The landscaping, the decorative planting and landscaping is added. The decorative pavers, stone benches, grass, shrubs, and trees, and the design elements meant to be consistent with the work that was done on the Main Street renewal of the year earlier. Of course, then 2nd Street was reconstructed along with the Main Street reconstruction project to give us a finished site that we can immediately use for public purpose. The annex lower level, which was the former vehicle garage, presented some serious challenges. The below-grade garage doors were steep and blind entry into the highway. They flooded frequently. No street-level entry, no curb and gutter. Here's those garage doors. Combination of poor design and bad visibility. The interior of the building, we needed to clean up, get it ready for redevelopment. The garage essentially was an unusable shell, and the process of redeveloping this space begins with removing the overhead garage doors, raising the foundation wall to street level, and then building a street level floor level to make this space accessible to the public street. Here you see that process of constructing that space with the floor joist and subfloor, liner walls along the outside exterior walls of the building, and cutting in a new entry. The new entry at street level also gives us a pathway to the auditorium. The finished design creates street level space with a utility crawl space underneath it for our power, gas, plumbing, heating, and air conditioning services, along with our fire sprinkler main valves assembly and the fire sprinkler mains. Power, of course, furnaces are added, and then spray foam insulation throughout all the exterior walls. Add the sheetrock partitions, and we have a finished space ready to be utilized. Accessibility in an old building retrofit is a challenge. We basically had to remove structural concrete floor sections from a concrete floor that was 14 inches thick, and then replace the missing structural sections with new 10-inch structural steel. This requires a set of specialized cutting tools and a contractor skilled in concrete cutting. This is the actual wheelchair lift shaft construction process that leads to our wheelchair lift from street level on Highway 71 with wheelchair ramp access to the street. And then on the 2nd Street side, our new street level handicap accessible entrance on that side of the building gives us 2 means of ingress and egress for modern accessibility requirements. That gives us our finished lobby. And then in the interior of the building, we deal with elevation changes with an interior wheelchair ramp, which of course lead back to the elevator and of course the restrooms. So the building can be accessible throughout. On the 2nd floor classroom level, of course, we start with fixing the roof leak, removing the asbestos-containing materials, floor tile, and then removing PCB ballasts from the old light fixtures. All of the water-damaged flooring needed to be removed. Plaster needed to be repaired and sometimes replaced completely. The 2nd floor of the building is now redesigned for occupancy to modern standards, including 2 new furnaces with separate climate zones to control energy costs, and 2 100-amp electric service panels, along with 2 wheelchair accessible restrooms designed into the classroom level of the annex. And of course then we're going to frame in our energy walls on the ceiling and throughout the exterior. This gives us a means to run new power conduit for power, internet, phone cable, and of course then these are insulated with spray foam, sheetrocked. New light fixtures, high efficiency light fixtures, and a new high efficiency forced air natural gas heating and cooling system gives us a finished space that's very clean, neat looking, and economical to operate. The facility on the 2nd floor is also handicap accessible to the 2nd floor lobby through our elevator shaft. So we've got a great space here on the 2nd floor. The lower level below the drill hall required some modifications to the layout of the space to create some egress and public assembly. This required demolition of some of the existing staircases, creating fire-rated stairways with fire-rated door enclosures and pathways to exit the building as needed in an emergency, and blown-in insulation in the ceiling and spray foam insulation on the exterior foundation walls. In the auditorium renovations start with a firewall and occupancy separation to meet our modern building code requirements. As we're going through renovating the auditorium, we're adding new electric power throughout, and then we're adding heating and air conditioning system with oversized ductwork with special duct silencers for our intended use as a performing arts center and event center. High efficiency lighting, of course, added to the program. For redevelopment, here's the roof-mounted furnace and AC unit being installed from a crane on the Highway 71 side of the building. The entire roof of the facility is replaced with new spray foam insulation covered with a silicone spray-on membrane. On the inside of the building, we insulate with spray foam on the east and west gable ends with spray foam, and then an acoustic cellulose that also provides a thermal barrier over the spray foam. those east and west ends. The north and south energy walls, those get framed in, along with more spray foam. Energy efficiency is a big thing here. Getting the sheetrock installed, getting it primed and painted, and now we have a facility that we can heat and cool, keep a large audience comfortable basically year-round. The design objectives for this space are to create a multi-purpose space for public assembly for a variety of uses, including an appropriate lobby and a little bit of catering and restrooms on the auditorium level. This space is really designed to be flexible and versatile in its use. Here's the lobby restroom additions being installed. Locally, over 100 contractors and suppliers have provided goods and services or have been paid to provide expertise to contribute to the redevelopment project, including engineers, designers, special contractors for environmental abatement, construction contractors, skilled trades, and building materials providers. Again, local companies, 4 law firms, 7 financial institutions, and a variety of insurance services. Kind of gives you an indication of how complex this project has been to put together to move this project forward. Here it is set up for a theater production with staging and seating. We have a limited certificate of occupancy for this space, and in the last 2 years we've done 30 events with 4,000 public attendances. We've been in the newspaper at least 20 times, a dozen different public meetings. These slides show you some of the various events that have already taken place in the auditorium, even in its unfinished state. Governor's Fishing Opener was held in Park Rapids in 2013. Our local community opera company has been able to do some theater productions. We've done several concert events. We've done trade shows. We've done public hearings, musical performances, cultural events sponsored by the Kichigami Library System. Northern Light Opera Company has performed The Apothecary in March. April was the Flower Show. In May, June, July, concerts, book signings, live radio show program through Great Northern Radio Show, and a touring group of Zarengo Flamingo Dance Tour. And this December, the Mall and the Night Visitors. Now we have, from an abandoned toxic site, a new community asset. I'd like to finish with a quote here. Coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. Thank you very much for your attention, and I really appreciate you listening to this presentation today.